Sure, let's break it down simply. Who was Lord Curzon? Lord Curzon was a British leader who became the Viceroy of India, the top British official in India. Before he was Viceroy, he had a lot of experience and knowledge about India. He had traveled there many times and wrote books about Asian problems. Curzon's ambition. Curzon had dreamed of being the Viceroy of India since he was young. He felt he knew a lot about India, but always believed there was more to learn. He thought learning about the East Asia was like being in a never-ending school. Challenges in India. During Curzon's time. 1. Famine and plague. India had faced a terrible famine, a time when there is not enough food, and a bubonic plague, a deadly disease, just before Curzon became viceroy. These events caused a lot of problems, like less money coming in from taxes because people were suffering. 2. Declining revenues. Because of the famine and plague, the revenues, money the British government collected from India, were going down. This made it hard to run things smoothly. 3. Political climate. Many Indians were becoming more aware and were questioning whether the British should be in control of India. There was growing political unrest because people were unhappy with British rule. 4. Defense problems. As European countries were expanding their empires, India needed to make sure it was well defended. This was a new and serious issue for India. Example to understand. Imagine you are the leader of a large group of people who have just gone through a tough time with not enough food and a spreading illness. The group is unhappy and questioning your leadership. You also need to make sure the group is protected from outsiders who might want to take advantage of their weakness. Your job is to manage these problems and make things better, even though it is very challenging. Extra information. Curzon's background. He had studied and traveled a lot before becoming viceroy. This made him very knowledgeable, but also made him aware that there was always more to learn about India. Curzon's approach. His goal was to address these issues and improve the situation in India, despite the challenges. Does this help clarify things? Who was Lord Curzon, and what did he want to do? Lord Curzon was a British official, and he became the Viceroy of India, the most important British person in India, in the early 1900s. When Curzon became Viceroy, he wanted to fix how the British government worked in India. He believed the government was not working well and needed to be improved. He thought that just like a machine sometimes needs to be taken apart, cleaned, and repaired to work better, the government in India also needed to be fixed to work more efficiently. What were Curzon's goals? Efficiency of administration. He wanted the government to be more efficient, meaning it should work faster, make better decisions, and solve problems quickly. Centralization. Curzon wanted most of the decisions to be made by the British central government, the highest level of government. He did not want local Indian leaders or people to have too much say. He believed that British officials knew best and should be in control. Strong British rule. Curzon wanted British rule in India to be very strong, like a rock of granite, a rock that's very strong and can't be broken easily. He didn't care much about what Indian people thought or wanted. He focused on keeping British control over India. Example to understand Curzon's approach. Imagine you are the boss of a big company that isn't working well. People are making mistakes and things are slow. To fix this, you decide to make sure the company is run smoothly with clear rules and fast decisions. Only you and a few top managers, British officials, will make important decisions instead of letting everyone decide. Centralization. You want to keep your control strong, like a rock that can't be moved. Strong rule. What did Curzon do to fix the police? The Police Commission gave many suggestions to improve the police system. Here are some of the important ones. Increase salaries. The Commission said the police should be paid more money. When people are paid well, they are usually more motivated to work hard and be honest. Hire more police. There were not enough police officers to keep law and order. The commission suggested hiring more officers in every province, region. Training schools. The police didn't have enough training. The commission recommended setting up training schools for both officers and constables, the lower ranks of police. This way, police officers would be better prepared to do their jobs. Hire new people. Instead of promoting the same people from within, the commission suggested that the government hire new people for higher police ranks. This way, there would be fresh ideas and better leaders in the police force. Provincial police service. The commission recommended creating a provincial police service in every region to make sure that each province had its own well-organized police system. Criminal intelligence. They also suggested setting up a central criminal intelligence department. This department would collect information about criminals from all over India and share it with the provinces so that the police could work together more effectively. What happened after the reforms? Many of these changes were accepted and put into place. The government started spending more money on the police. In 1898, they spent £2,117,000. By 1908-09, they were spending £3,212,189, which was a lot more money to improve the police system. Example to understand police reforms. Imagine you are running a group of security guards at a large event, but they don't know how to do their jobs well. They are not trained, they don't follow rules, and they sometimes accept money to do favors. To fix this, you decide to pay them better, increase salaries, hire more guards because there aren't enough to control the crowd, hire more police. Set up a school to teach them how to be better guards, training schools. Bring in new people for higher positions instead of promoting the same people, hire new leaders. Create a system where guards can share information about troublemakers, criminal intelligence department. This is exactly what Curzon did with the police system in India. Summary. Lord Curzon wanted to reform the government in India and make it more efficient. One of his big projects was to fix the police system, which wasn't working well. He set up a police commission to study the problems and made many changes, such as increasing salaries, hiring more police, and creating training schools. These reforms helped improve the police force, but it also meant spending a lot more money on the police. Does this make things clearer? Feel free to ask more questions if you need further explanation. Here is the exact text you requested. Famine and drought, 1899 to 1900. Famine means there was not enough food because crops couldn't grow. Drought means there wasn't enough rain for a long time, so people had nothing to eat. Between 1899 and 1900, this happened in large parts of South, Central, and Western India. Over 1 million people died because of hunger and lack of food. To understand what went wrong, the British government asked a man named Sir Anthony MacDonald to study what happened. They formed a group called the Famine Commission. What did the Famine Commission say? The help, food, money that was given to people was too much. The British gave food and money without asking people to work for it. The commission said that able-bodied people, those who could work, should be given simple jobs to earn money or food instead of just handing them things for free. They also said there should be special plans to deal with fodder famine, which means a shortage of food for animals like cows and buffaloes. Land revenue and farmers, 1902. Land revenue is the tax farmers had to pay for using the land to grow crops. But what happens if the crops fail because of bad weather? If crops fail, farmers can't sell their produce, which means they have no money to pay the tax. So, in 1902, the British made a new rule to help farmers. They said, if crops fail, farmers would pay less tax or no tax at all. If there was an increase in the land tax later, it would happen slowly and carefully, so farmers could manage it. Irrigation, water for crops. Irrigation means bringing water to dry land to help crops grow. This is very important, especially in places where it doesn't rain much. To make sure farmers got enough water for their fields, Lord Curzon appointed another group in 1901, led by a man named Sir Colin Scott Moncrieff. What did the Irrigation Commission suggest? They suggested spending 4 crore rupees, a huge amount of money back then, over the next 20 years to improve the irrigation system. This money would be used to build canals to bring water to dry areas. Examples of work done. They finished the Jhelum Canal. They started work on new canals like the Upper Chenab Canal, the Upper Jhelum Canal, and the Lower Bari Doab Canal. These canals helped bring water to large parts of the Punjab region. Punjab Land Alienation Act, 1900. Alienation means taking something away from someone. During this time, many farmers in Punjab were in danger of losing their land to rich moneylenders. To protect farmers, the Punjab Land Alienation Act was passed in 1900. This law said that farmers' land could not be easily taken away and given to people who were not farmers, like moneylenders. This way, farmers could keep their land even when they had financial problems. Here is the exact text you requested. 5. Cooperative Credit Societies Act, 1904. Farmers often needed loans, money borrowed from others, to buy seeds or equipment to grow crops, but moneylenders charged them very high interest rates, making it hard for farmers to repay the loans. To help farmers, the British passed the Cooperative Credit Societies Act in 1904. This allowed farmers to borrow money at low interest rates from cooperative societies, groups of people who come together to help each other financially. This was much better than borrowing from moneylenders who would charge very high interest rates. 6. Improving agriculture and farming. The British also wanted to improve how farming was done in India, so they set up an Imperial Agriculture Department. This was like a big office that looked after everything related to farming. The department had a leader called an Inspector General. His job was to introduce better farming techniques, encourage farmers to use scientific methods to grow more crops, improve livestock, farm animals like cows, buffaloes, and sheep to help farmers. 7. New Department of Commerce and Industry. Curzon also saw the need to better manage India's growing businesses. So he set up a new Department of Commerce and Industry. This department looked after posts and telegraphs, which were like the old version of modern-day post offices and communication systems. Railways, train systems that connected different parts of India. Mines, places where minerals like coal and gold were dug up from the ground. Ports, places where ships bring goods to and from India. Factories and industries, where goods were made. 8. Indian Coinage and Paper Currency Act, 1899. Coinage means making coins, and paper currency means money in the form of notes. In 1899, Curzon passed a law that made the British sovereign, a British gold coin, legal in India. One sovereign was worth 15 rupees. The plan was to make India use gold as the base for its money. But this idea didn't work well because it was too difficult to manage. So they came up with a new plan called the Gold Exchange Standard. Under this plan, the government could give rupees in exchange for gold and gold in exchange for rupees, but only for sending money abroad, called foreign remittances. 9. Railway expansion. Curzon was very interested in building more railways because trains made it easier to move goods and people around the country. He built more miles of railway lines than any other British leader before him. To improve the railways, he invited a railway expert from England named Mr. Thomas Robertson. Robertson found that the railways in India weren't working well and suggested big changes called reforms. Robertson's suggestions: railways should be run more like a business to make money and work better. A railway board should be set up to manage all the railway-related issues, like controlling state-owned railways, railways owned by the government, supervising company-owned railways, railways run by private companies. Why are railways important? Railways helped connect different parts of India, making it easier for people to travel and for goods like crops, cloth, and coal to be transported from one place to another. This helped boost the economy. In summary, famine. Curzon dealt with a major food shortage and suggested people should work for the food they received if they were able. Land taxes. He made it easier for farmers to pay less tax during bad crop seasons. Irrigation. Curzon spent a lot of money to build canals to bring water to dry fields. Land protection. He made sure that farmers in Punjab wouldn't lose their land to moneylenders. Cheap loans for farmers. Farmers got easier loans at lower interest rates through cooperatives. Better farming. A new department was set up to improve farming and livestock. Commerce and industry. Curzon created a new department to manage industries, posts, and railways. Money system. He introduced new rules about how money was used, but the plan didn't work as expected. Railways. He expanded the railway system, helping connect the country and make trade easier. These reforms were part of Curzon's effort to improve India's economy, especially for farmers and industry. All right, let's break it down slowly and step by step with examples to make it really simple. Judicial reforms, Curzon's time. 1. What is a judicial reform? A judicial reform means making changes to improve how courts and judges work. Imagine if a school finds that teachers are too busy and can't grade all the homework on time. The school might hire more teachers to help. This would be a reform or change to improve how the school works. In the same way, Curzon wanted to make the courts better at handling cases. 2. What did Curzon want to improve? Curzon wanted to make the courts where judges make decisions work faster and better. Let's see how. 3. Increasing the number of judges. Think of the High Court as a big classroom where all the difficult problems come. Sometimes there are too many problems, and one teacher or judge can't handle all of them. This makes everything slow. Curzon noticed that there were too many cases in the Calcutta High Court, so he said, let's add more judges. It's like adding more teachers to help grade homework faster. 4. Better pay for judges. Judges, like any worker, need to be paid well for the important work they do. If you do a big job at home, like cleaning up a huge mess, wouldn't you expect some kind of reward or pocket money? In the same way, Curzon said, judges should be paid more for their hard work, and they should also get better pensions when they retire. This was to make sure judges felt happy and were focused on doing their jobs well. 5. What about the Civil Procedure Code? Now this part sounds tricky, but it's simple. The Indian Code of Civil Procedure is a set of rules that says how cases should be handled in courts. Think of it like rules for a game. Let's say you're playing a board game. There are rules to move pieces, roll the dice, and win. If the rules are not clear, you might end up arguing. The Civil Procedure Code is like the rule book for courts to follow. Curzon made sure this rule book was updated, like how you might change the rules of a game if the old ones were confusing. 6. What was still missing? Even though Curzon made some changes, one big problem stayed the same. Cases in court still took a long time to get decided. Imagine you asked your teacher for help with a math problem, and they told you to wait for months before they could give you the answer. That would be frustrating, right? Similarly, people were upset because their court cases were getting delayed. 7. Example to understand delays. Let's say a person has a dispute with their neighbor about a broken fence. They go to court to solve the problem, but instead of getting a quick decision, the case keeps getting delayed. The person has to wait a long time before knowing if the neighbor will fix the fence or not. This is the kind of delay that Curzon didn't fully fix. Extra information to make it even easier. Judges are like referees in a football game. They make sure everyone plays by the rules and decide who is right or wrong. When Curzon hired more judges, it's like bringing in more referees to handle multiple football matches at the same time, so no one has to wait. When Curzon paid judges more, it's like giving referees better pay so they stay motivated to do a good job. Summary. Curzon wanted to improve how courts worked. He added more judges to handle the heavy workload. He increased the salary and pensions of judges to keep them happy. He updated the rulebook of courts, called the Civil Procedure Code. But he didn't fix the biggest problem, the delay in making decisions. Does this explanation make everything clearer for you? Alright, let's go step by step, in simple words, and I'll explain everything to you like you're hearing about it for the first time. Army reforms in British India. 1. Why did India need an army? From the start of British rule in India, the army had two main jobs. 1. Protection from external dangers. This means protecting India from enemies outside the country. Example, if a neighboring country tried to attack India, the army's job was to stop them. 2. Keeping peace inside the country. This means making sure there were no big fights or rebellions inside India. Example, if some people inside India started fighting against the British, the army would step in to stop the fighting. 2. Why was the British government worried about the northwest of India? At that time, Russia was growing strong in Central Asia. Russia was doing things that made the British nervous. For example, they were building a railway in Tashkent, a place in Central Asia, and this made the British feel like Russia was getting closer to India. The British government thought, what if Russia attacks India from the northwest side? So they started to focus on protecting this part of India. 3. Who was Lord Kitchener, and what did he do? Lord Kitchener was the commander-in-chief of the army in India from 1902 to 1908. This means he was the top boss of the army in India, and his job was to make the army stronger and better organized. Top 4. What changes did Kitchener make to the Indian army? Kitchener made many changes, and we will go through them one by one. A. Dividing the army into 2 commands. To make the army easier to manage, Kitchener split the Indian army into 2 main groups, called commands. 1. Northern Command. Its headquarters, main office, was in Murree, a place in the north, and its main fighting point was in Peshawar. This means if there was any danger in the north, the Northern Command would handle it. 2. Southern Command. Its headquarters was in Pune, a place in the south, and its main fighting point was in Quetta. This group would protect the south. B. Grouping soldiers into divisions and brigades. Each command was further broken down into divisions, and in each division, there were 3 smaller groups called brigades. Brigades had 2 native battalions, groups of Indian soldiers, 1 British battalion, group of British soldiers. Think of it like dividing a big football team into smaller teams. Each smaller team has both Indian and British players. Every brigadier, the person in charge of the brigade, was responsible for making sure his brigade worked well, like a coach who makes sure his team plays well. C. Training college for officers. Kitchener wanted officers, the people in charge of soldiers, to be well trained. So he opened a training college for officers in Quetta, just like a famous college in England called Camberley College. This was like a school for soldiers where they learned how to lead and fight well. D. Better weapons for the British troops. Kitchener gave better weapons, like guns and cannons, to the British soldiers in India. Example, if you play a game and get better equipment, like a stronger racket for tennis or a better bat for cricket, you will play better. In the same way, the British soldiers were given better weapons to fight more effectively. E. The Kitchener Test. Kitchener introduced a special test called the Kitchener Test for every battalion, a large group of soldiers. This test was meant to check if the soldiers were strong, well-trained, and ready to fight in tough situations. Think of it like a sports team going through tough training to make sure every player is in good shape before a big tournament. 5. The cost of the reforms. Making all these changes wasn't cheap. The army needed more money for new weapons, more soldiers, training colleges, better pay for officers. This increase in spending was part of making the army stronger, but it also cost the government a lot. Summary, in simple terms. 1. Why did India need an army? To protect India from enemies and keep peace inside the country. 2. Why was the British worried about the Northwest? They were scared Russia might attack India from the Northwest. 3. What did Kitchener do to improve the army? He divided the army into 2 big groups, gave them better weapons, opened a school for soldiers, and introduced a tough test to check their readiness. 4. Why was this important? Kitchener wanted to make sure the army was strong and ready to protect India, especially from dangers in the Northwest. Now, does this make everything clearer for you? If you want more examples or have any questions, just let me know. Alright, let's take it slowly and explain this topic in the simplest way possible. I'll go word by word, line by line, so you understand it fully. Calcutta Corporation Act, 1899. What is the Calcutta Corporation? The Calcutta Corporation was like a local government for the city of Calcutta, now called Kolkata. It took care of things like keeping the city clean, making sure there was enough water for everyone, fixing roads, making rules for the people living in the city. Think of it like the city council or municipal government we have today, which looks after all the services in a city. 2. Who passed the Calcutta Corporation Act and why? The Calcutta Corporation Act was passed by Lord Curzon, who was the Viceroy of India. The Viceroy was the top British leader in India at that time, representing the British government. Curzon wanted to make sure that the British had more control over the city's affairs. He said this was done in the name of efficiency, meaning he thought things would run better with more British control. 3. What did the act do? This law, the Calcutta Corporation Act of 1899, made some important changes. Reduced the number of elected Indian members. Before this act, more Indians were part of the corporation because of reforms made by another British leader, Lord Ripon. Ripon believed in local self-government, meaning he wanted more Indians to be involved in running their cities. Curzon did not like this. Gave more power to the British members. The act made sure that the British members had the majority, more people than the Indian members, in the corporation and its committees. This meant the British could control all decisions without needing much input from Indian members. 4. What was the result of this change? The result of this act was that the Indians lost power in their own city's government. The corporation, which was supposed to be a way for Indians to help run their own city, became what people called an Anglo-Indian House. This means the corporation was now controlled mostly by British people and no longer had much representation from the Indian people. 5. How did the Indian members react? The Indian members were very unhappy with this change. They felt that they were being pushed out of the decision-making process. 28 Indian members resigned in protest. This means 28 Indians who were part of the corporation quit to show that they didn't agree with the new law. When you resign, it means you give up your job because you're unhappy with something. So they left because they believed this change was unfair. 6. Did Curzon change his mind? No, Lord Curzon didn't change his mind. He didn't care that the Indian members were upset. He was very confident about his decision and even boasted about it. In 1903, at a fancy dinner called a banquet, Curzon made a speech and said that when he retires from being viceroy, he would love to become the mayor of Calcutta. This shows that Curzon was very happy with the changes he made, and he didn't care if the Indians didn't like it. Example to simplify further. Let's imagine a school. Before the Calcutta Corporation Act, the students, Indians, were part of the student council, and they could help make decisions about the school with the teachers. The student council decided things like what fun activities to have, how to improve the school, and what rules to follow. Then, one day, a new principal came in and said, "I think the teachers should have more say than the students because they know better." So, he made a new rule that the teachers will always have more votes than the students. Now, even if the students want something, the teachers can overrule them. The students got really upset, and many of them quit the student council because they felt their voices didn't matter anymore. But the principal didn't care, and even joked, maybe one day, I'll become a student council leader myself. Why is this important? This act shows how the British were slowly taking more control over Indian cities and limiting the power of Indian people. It also shows that some British leaders, like Curzon, did not believe in letting Indians govern themselves, even in small ways like managing their own city. Summary. 1. The Calcutta Corporation was a local government that took care of the city of Calcutta. 2. Lord Curzon passed the Calcutta Corporation Act in 1899 to reduce the power of Indian members in this government. 3. The act gave more power to the British members, making sure they had control over the city's decisions. 4. Many Indian members were angry and resigned in protest because they felt the act was unfair. 5. Curzon didn't care about the Indians' feelings and was proud of what he did, even joking about becoming the mayor of Calcutta after retiring. Now you understand the Calcutta Corporation Act and why it was such a big deal. If you need more examples or want me to explain anything else, just let me know. All right, let's explain this in the simplest possible way, step by step, so you can understand everything clearly. Ancient Monuments Act, 1904. 1. What is an ancient monument? An ancient monument is a very old building or place that is important because it tells us something about history. These monuments could be temples, caves, palaces, forts, or stupas. They help us understand how people lived, what they believed, and how they built things a long time ago. Examples of ancient monuments in India are Ajanta Ellora caves. These are beautiful ancient caves with carvings and paintings. Sanchi Stupa, a large dome-shaped structure built to honor Buddha and his teachings. 2. Why was the Ancient Monuments Act created? Lord Curzon, who was the Viceroy of India, was a person who really loved history. He wanted to protect and preserve the ancient monuments of India so that they wouldn't get damaged or destroyed. He noticed that many of these old buildings were falling apart because they hadn't been taken care of. So, he passed a law in 1904 called the Ancient Monuments Act to repair, restore, and protect these historical places. 3. What did the Ancient Monuments Act do? The Ancient Monuments Act of 1904 did a few important things. Repair and restore monuments. This means the government would fix any damage done to these old buildings. For example, if the walls of a palace were cracked, or if a cave painting was fading, they would make it look better and stronger again. Protect the monuments. They made rules so that people could not destroy or change these ancient buildings. For example, no one could build a house right next to an ancient temple or break pieces of it for their use. 4. How much money was spent on this? Lord Curzon got £50,000, which was a lot of money back then, to be spent on repairing historical buildings all over India. The money was used to make sure the monuments would last for many more years. 5. What else did Curzon do? Besides fixing the monuments, Curzon did more. He put pressure on Indian states, meaning he pushed them to protect their historical sites. He told them they must take care of places like the Ajanta Ellora caves and Sanchi Stupa, because they are a part of India's rich heritage, meaning they are valuable treasures from the past. He asked the provincial governments to open museums. Museums are places where old objects, like artifacts, special things from the past, like statues, jewelry, tools, etc., can be kept safely so people can look at them and learn about history. 6. Why did Curzon do this? Curzon wanted to show his respect and honor for the people who created these amazing things in the past. He said this was his way of paying tribute to the poets, artists, and creators of the past. Think of it like this. If you found an old, precious toy that your grandparents played with, you would want to take care of it so it doesn't get broken. That's what Curzon was trying to do for India's ancient buildings and art. Example to simplify further. Imagine you have a very old and special toy that your great-great-grandparents made by hand. Over time, the toy gets a little broken. Maybe the paint is coming off and it's starting to fall apart. What would you do? You'd want to fix it and make sure it's safe, right? You wouldn't want anyone to throw it away or break it even more. That's what Lord Curzon was doing with India's old monuments. He saw that these important historical places were like treasures, and he wanted to protect them, fix them, and make sure people could see and learn from them for many more years. Why is this important? Preserving history. The act helped make sure that India's amazing historical buildings and art weren't lost forever. Learning from the past, by saving these monuments, people today can still learn about the art, culture, and history of India from long ago. Protecting heritage. Curzon's actions showed that these monuments were not just stones and walls. They were part of India's identity and culture, something to be proud of. 1. The Ancient Monuments Act of 1904 was created by Lord Curzon to protect and repair old buildings and monuments in India. 2. This act provided 50,000 to fix and maintain these historical places. 3. Curzon told Indian states to take care of important sites like the Ajanta-Ellora caves and the Sanchi Stupa. 4. He also wanted museums to be built to keep important historical objects safe. 5. Curzon believed this was a way to show respect for the people who built these amazing things in the past. Now you understand the Ancient Monuments Act 1904 and why it was so important to protect India's history. If you have any more questions or need more examples, feel free to ask.